Hi everyone, how are you doing? And in this video, we're going to cover what Microsoft Power Apps is. So by the end of this video, you will understand what the Power Platform is and how Power Apps fits into the ecosystem. We'll understand the building blocks of the Power Platform, so solutions, environments, etc. We'll understand what Power Apps are and the different types of Power Apps that you can create, the core purpose and benefits of Power Apps, and how you can build your first Power Apps. And we'll go into building your Canvas apps and model-driven apps as well. So a lot of apps in this video. So the first thing I want to do is break down the Microsoft Power Platform ecosystem and where it sits in the Microsoft ecosystem in general. So you can see here at the bottom, we have the foundation layer, which is Azure. Now, Azure is where you'd manage all of your identities and inherently where you are building your Power Platform solutions, even if you might not see it. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you're already on the Azure cloud. And you probably already have developers assigned to manage the Azure cloud. But here you can do things like custom development, logic apps, AI Foundry, and identity management. So, this is where the user management will really live. Then a layer above, we have the Power Platform, and this is Microsoft's suite of low-code tools. So here on the left-hand side, we've got the tool of question of this video, which is Power Apps, which is primarily made for application development. So this is effectively what your users are going to see and the apps you're going to be building for them to use on a day-to-day basis. Then you've got Power Automate for process automation. Now, if you think any sort of data integration or background processes or scheduled process, Power Automate can handle that in your Microsoft ecosystem. So if you need to send an email to Outlook, for example, you can do that using Power Automate on an automated basis. Then Power BI, as I'm sure you've heard of, is used for business analytics. So if you think of reporting or anything like that, to really visualize your data, Power BI is the place to go. And then we've got Power Pages, which I would say is the least low-code tool out of this low-code platform that we have. And what Power Pages gives you the ability to do, which is unique to all of these other platforms, is expose your internal data externally. So if you want people to log in and view the data that you store internally in an external basis, Power Pages is the place to go. Then we've got the AI-powered agents builder, which is Copilot Studio. So this is Microsoft's answer to create agents and copilots, which basically talk to all of your internal systems as well. I'm just going to very briefly cover Microsoft Dataverse 2 because it's quite important. We have a dedicated slide for it, but it's basically the Power Platform's native cloud database. Now, the integration from Microsoft Dataverse to all of these different applications are very strong. So in general, when you use Dataverse, you know that you're supported from a security perspective and also an integration perspective. So the only thing you need to keep in mind about Dataverse for now is it's the Power Platform's native cloud database, so a place to store your data. So let's go over some of the benefits of Power Apps. So the first one is rapid development. So you can build apps in hours. Now, I think the lines have blurred a little bit, especially with generative AI development on platforms like Lovable, because the advantage of low-code tools has kind of gone down in that sense because people are generating apps and building apps with artificial intelligence, which is incredible, but again lowers the benefit that we have at the top here. But it is something that we should consider. It is much quicker to build apps on Power Apps than it is doing the traditional development. Then connecting to multiple data sources such as SharePoint, Excel, and SQL, something that we will get into a little bit more, but you can see that the Power Platform is integrated with the rest of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So it's very powerful because you can connect it to these different tools that you are using on a day-to-day basis. Now, you can make the argument that we shouldn't be using Excel as a data source in the first place, but that's an argument for another day. No coding expertise required, so you can get very far in the Power Platform and the Power App space without having any specific coding experience. Now, with that being said, coding expertise does help because you can extend these platforms when the low-code tools might not provide you the use cases that you need. But in general, coding isn't a requirement for building Power Apps. And I'll show you how quickly and easily it is to generate your first Power App. And the most important benefit that I think, which makes Power Apps stand out in comparison to tools like Lovable, is the Microsoft ecosystem context. So if we go back, we can see that the Power Platform has full integration with the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So this meets you where you work. People are using Teams on a day-to-day basis, SharePoint, Excel, Outlook, OneDrive. These are things that people use on a day-to-day basis within their work. And we have full integration with the Power Platform native to the system. So it's fully supported and we don't have to worry about, will these systems talk to each other? The answer is yes, they will. Now, with that being said, there are two different types of Power Apps. There are model-driven apps and Canvas apps. Okay, really quickly before I continue with the rest of the video. Now, Now, I did say that there are two main ways to build Power Apps, and what I meant to say is that there's two ways that I've seen Power Apps be made in production in 2026, and they are Canvas apps and model-driven apps. But I didn't mention that there are now Vibe apps and also Code apps. And the reason I didn't mention these two is because they are still currently in preview. As you can see, Power Apps, Code apps are in preview, and also the new Vibe experience also in preview. So they are not recommended to be used in production just yet. However, I think it's important that we highlight that these do exist in 2026 and are likely to be elevated to production by the year end. If you want to get access to this cheat sheet and also just have a better understanding of what Vibe apps and Code apps are, what you can do is come to the Powercademy Success Kit, put in your name, email, some of your information, select submit, and then I'll email you over the Success Kit. And then these continue basically a bunch of folders and a lot of my cheat sheets and resources. And you can open this up here and take a look for yourself. But yeah, I thought I'd add that as a caveat in case anyone had any questions in relation to that. But let's get back to the video. So let's start with model-driven apps. So the real differences between the two, I think we can boil them down to two specific differences that we'll get into here. But model-driven apps have a pre-built UI. And that means the UI of the model-driven app is rigid, and there's not really much room to customize the model-driven app within the system. You'll be able to tell when you're using a model-driven app because the look and feel is usually the same all across the board. Now, whilst Canvas apps, we have a highly customizable UI. So this is drag and drop, pixel perfect. We can exactly choose the way that they look and feel and the way that the functionality works in the application. That's the real difference between Canvas apps and model-driven apps. I would say another key difference is in model-driven apps, it only uses Dataverse, which is why we brushed on it in the earlier slide. It only supports Dataverse. There are some quirks and things you can do, like bringing custom pages to support other data sources, but natively, the tables within model-driven apps are a Dataverse only. Whereas in Canvas apps, you have flexible data sources. So you have things like SharePoint, Excel, and a lot of different connections that you can make. So those are really the big differences between the two. But the rule of thumb is use Canvas apps when you're not pushing a lot of data within the application, because it generally struggles against that. And use model-driven apps when you're looking to handle complex data operations and things like guiding your administrators through data processes. Model-driven apps are really, really good at that. So I always like to say, just very simply, things aren't always so simple within the Power Apps and Power Platform ecosystem. But if you've got a lot of data that you need to process, model-driven apps are generally the way to go. If you need a very customizable experience, you can use Canvas apps, but just be careful that you're not pushing so much data into your Canvas apps. So this is the dedicated slide that I mentioned to explain what Dataverse is. So as I mentioned, it's the cloud-based database that can sit behind Power Apps. Canvas apps can generally have many data sources, including SharePoint and SQL and Excel, but model-driven apps can only be connected to Dataverse. So just a bit of a refresher on what we just went through. So let's do our live demo and build our first Canvas app, because I did promise that we'd be hands-on with this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go to make.powerapps.com. And this is going to open my Power Apps environment, right? And this is where a lot of the building happens. In the top right, we've got our environment, and this is where we're going to be doing the work. Now, environments are essentially a container where we store and manage Power Apps, Power Automate flows, and Dataverse data, and really any component in the Power Platform. It helps us separate development, testing, and production workloads to keep things organized. This is an example of how an environment sits within your Power Platform ecosystem. You can see you've got your tenant with this dotted line, and then you can see you've got your individual environments. Here they're separated by region. So you can see each environment, we have dev, test, and prod, and each one contains a separate instance of apps, flows, and the Dataverse. So now that we've understood an environment, what we can do is come into create, and we're going to start with Copilot. Now, this is a relatively new and cool feature to basically generate your application based on natural language. So when we actually type in a prompt here, it will go off and build the tables necessary for what we're trying to build. And here I can even configure if I want multiple tables, one table, and even the table size. I've got an existing prompt to save you watching me type it. So long story short, we are building a comprehensive daily expense tracking app with the following features. It's basically something to manage our expenses, right? And if I select generate, what this is going to do is start by generating our tables for us. And you can see that's generated 4 tables for us, I believe. Yeah, we've got a category, a recurring expense, an expense, and a budget table. Now, I'm not sure if this is the way that I would architect this solution. So again, take this with a grain of salt. But again, this is a very high level overview of Power Apps. But long story short, what I can do is come into here and select view data, and then I can add to this table, right? So I can add a new column, and then I can add a display name, the data type, new rows for the test data. So I can basically customize my data structure before I create the app. But let's say I'm happy with this. What I can do then is come onto here, and you can see I can choose between creating me a Canvas app or a model-driven app. So let's just start with a Canvas app and select Save and Open App, and this should generate me my application. Okay, so you can see that that's been generated now. Again, take all this with a grain of salt because this doesn't work the best right now. It's only going to get better, but it doesn't work the best right now. I'm going to remove this Copilot because honestly, I haven't used it within Canvas apps. But you can see it's generated me a few screens on this Canvas app. So if I select play, I can see that it's a responsive Canvas app because all of these are moving depending on the size of my screen. If I come into the category screen, you can see I've got different areas for transport, health, utilities, foods. Expenses is where I can manage the expenses. I can add an area for budgeting and then recurring expenses as well. Now, this is very ugly, and I would not recommend pushing anything like this to production, but it gives you a base to build off. Now what I can do is select these individual elements, and the way Canvas apps work is through these formula bars. So if you've used Excel in the past, which you probably have if you're watching this video, these basically allow you to control the way that these different controls work. So you can see the search bar here, the search icon. If I go to the home button here, you can see it's just got a back function. But let's say, for example, I want this home button to take me to the welcome screen, right? I can type in a function, which is navigate, and we're going to navigate to the welcome screen. It's not going to work, is it? There we are. Capital W, select it. And then now what should happen when I open this? It'll take me to the welcome screen. So that's in a nutshell the way that Canvas apps are. Now you can see I have full control in the way that this navigation works. Now these are responsive, so they're a bit more rigid in the way that they move. But for example, if I want to insert a button into categories, I can select insert, come to button, and you can see I can drag and drop this anywhere I'd like. I can make it as big or as small as it needs to be. And I have full control in the way that this looks. If I want this button to overtake the whole screen, I could do that. Wouldn't be very productive, but yeah, you can see I have full control over the way that I build my Canvas app. I'm just gonna delete this for now. And what I'm gonna do is save and publish this Canvas app. Let's say we're happy with it. Give it a name and then save. So that's been published. And I'm not gonna lie to you, the way that we just built that is completely against the way that most architects and developers build Power App solutions, right? In general, what you do is you come to the solution area, and these are effectively where you create your folders to build your solution. So you wouldn't, in general, just come to create and build something. You'd like to come into solutions and build something that encapsulates the solution that you're building. So a solution, to define it in the Power Platform, is a container for all the components that make up your project. Think of it like a file, right? And in here, you can contain all of your apps, your Dataverse tables, your flows. And what this allows you to do is deploy your solutions between different environments, right? So see these as your environments. You've got your little briefcase here, which is your solution, and you can move this across 2 different environments so you can develop, test, and use your solutions without any problems. Now, solutions can be managed and unmanaged, and I'm not going to get into this too much because we're delving into this a little bit too far. But the takeaway I want you to take from this is unmanaged is typically used for development because they're a little bit more flexible, and managed are usually deployed into production and test environments. So that's the real difference that you should take from this. So in this case, what we would do is come in new solution, and then we'll give this a name. So expense. That's not how you spell expense, tracker, solution. And then we'll set a publisher, which is going to put the Powercademy publisher, and then we're going to create. And then when the solution is created, I can add existing, and I'm going to add the Canvas app that I just created. So we're going to add the contractor timesheet app, and we're going to add it like this. And the reason why you shouldn't be building outside of your solutions is now I have to go through and add all of the existing tables. Now, it's not a problem inherently, but it just makes things a little bit longer. So if I come into here and just add budget 1, category, I don't remember the other ones, but I know it's going to have CRDDE prefix. Yep, there they are. We're just going to take the ones, expense category, recurring expense, and I think that's it. So now I can just select next. We're going to include all the objects, and we're just going to add. So now I have a container for my solution to live in. So if I ever want to export this or move it to a different solution, I can do so, and everything is listed here for me. So now I want to take you through a live demo of building our first model-driven app. So we've just seen how a Canvas app works, so I just want to build through a model-driven app very quickly. So the way that we do this, and we'll do it the correct way this time, is we'll be in our solution, we'll select new, app, and then we're going to select model-driven app. Now we can give this a name, so expense tracker admin, short description, and we're going to select create. And now we've created the solution, we can add the pages. Now pages are effectively tables, or are generally tables. They can be web resources, which is a custom component, navigation links to other resources within your business, and custom pages, which are effectively a one-screen canvas app living in your solution. You can also have dashboards for reporting. So let's just keep it simple and select Dataverse table. Let's say, for example, we want to pull in our budget. Now I've got 2, which makes this a little bit confusing. So I'm just going to take the 1 here, and then let's take category. Again, I've got 2, so let's take expense category, and we're going to select show in navigation and add. Now again, you can see what I meant by model-driven apps are a little bit more rigid, right? So I've just added them as tables, and you can see I get this default experience for model-driven apps. But you can see that the experience is a lot more data-friendly in the sense of the way that I visualize the data, right? So if I click onto these, I've opened up a form with all of my fields, and here I have kind of a lot more flexible control over the data points that are in these specific fields. I've got my command bar here, so I can save and close and assign these to different people. And again, these are very typical from model-driven apps. What you can customize in model-driven apps are these forms, these views, and a few other things like the command bar. And you do have extension capability here, but the real difference is it's not pixel perfect. So I can't exactly make this look the way that I want it to. It has to follow the constraints within a model-driven app. I can also come into here and see how it would look like on a phone, which again is available for me. Now it doesn't look the best, I will admit, but then I'm going to come back into desktop and I can see this working for me as well. But let's save and publish this. And let's say for whatever reason, I want to change this budget form. So what I would do is I would go into my solution, which isn't here. I'll just go back, go into tables, budget, forms, and I added all of the components. So I should have all the forms. And what we'd be looking for is the main form here. Now, there's a lot of different types of forms and intricacies that you can get into in terms of model-driven apps. And if you want to hear more, we have a model-driven masterclass program, which will be linked in the description. But I can basically come into here and drag and drop these fields anywhere that I would like on this form. So I have full capability to customize this any way that I would like. I also have different components that I can add to the form. So things like subgrids, which would be here, displays like calendars. You can even embed a Canvas app within your form, and things like timelines as well. So a lot of capability that we have within our model-driven app forms. So now that you know what Power Apps are and you have an introduction to it, what are the next steps if you want to continue learning Power Apps or the Power Platform? So the first thing I want you to do is sign up for a free trial. Now you can sign up for a free Power Apps trial. You're going to need a work or school account. So I'll have a video linked in the description which shows you how you can get a work or school account for yourself for a small monthly fee. So I would highly recommend signing up for the Power Apps trial. Create your own development account. Again, the video for that is in the description. Actually, this should probably be first, but yeah, nevertheless, in the description, it will say that. And then the third thing for you to do is to join Powercademy. So again, we'll have a link in the description with these step-by-steps, and we'll keep you updated with weekly newsletters and updates on the Power Platform so you can level up your game as soon as possible. So thank you so much for staying tuned for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I try and reply to every single one. And yeah, happy learning.